Now, I know many of you are doing the old PART. Why? Because I gotta. After the Steelers win over the New England Patriots this past week. That's a quote there from The Mask, from the 94 Jim Carrey Mask, for any of you who didn't realize. But I don't mean to pop your balloon or rain on your parade. I mean, maybe I do, but I just do it because it's necessary right now. It's just the truth. While the Steelers win over the Patriots, it absolutely was a big win. It was a big emotional win, and it was a necessary win for sure. It exposed a lot more about the New England Patriots being weaker than normal than it did about the Steelers being this great world beater of a team and show really what they can do. Sorry. This is another edition here of Mic Drop on Pittsburgh Sports Live, coming at you from the Beaver County Auto Studios up above Market Square here in downtown Pittsburgh. And while you're at it, of course, make sure to click subscribe on the YouTube channel. Make it easier for us to get this golden quality content to you. Also follow us on Twitter at PGH Sports Live on Twitter. Now, it was a big win, for sure. The Steelers needed the win. They absolutely needed the win, and it was emotional because of what happened last year and because it is the Patriots, even the players that haven't been around for all these years, the players that aren't Ben Roethlisberger, who's experienced so many heart-wrenching losses to Tom Brady and the New England Patriots, whether in the regular season or in the playoffs over the years. And the Steelers, as I detailed on the last show, there's no shame in this, but Mike Tomlin and Big Ben are in that second tier in terms of successful Hall of Fame coach and quarterback, been together for so long, a decade plus, but yet they just don't match up to Belichick and Brady in terms of their legacy, in terms of their greatness, in terms of their historical significance, or even how successful and great they've been over that period of time. So they've always been looking up at those two guys, and I'm sure that was annoying for many, many years, and it's a big win for that purpose alone, really. Separate from even what was necessary for this year. They had to get the win. And again, as I also detailed last week, they only were in that situation of needing the must win because of their own doing, because of the loss to the Raiders, even in the black hole, but a loss to a bad Raiders team, because of getting swept by the entire AFC West, actually. And not every one of those teams, two of those teams are not playoff teams. For getting a tie, allowing the Browns without Baker Mayfield to open up the year with a tie against you. That's a non-Baker Mayfield Browns team coming off a winless season, able to tie you. And then another one of those is the Steelers allowing a 16-point comeback to lose to the Chargers. It's home, it's national TV, it's a great Charger team that looks like they're Super Bowl caliber and maybe the greatest team Phillip Rivers has ever quarterbacked in his NFL career. But still, you're up 16 points and you also think you're a Super Bowl contender. You can't lose that game. So those are the reasons. It's their own doing on why that was a must-win against the Patriots, especially for having to go now on the road to New Orleans, which was a more difficult game, I even figured, entering these last 3 weeks than the Patriot game was, even knowing the history. But with all that said, it was a big win. It was an emotional win for sure. It exposed more of the Patriots being weaker than normal, of Brady maybe finally hitting the wall or at least close to, of Belichick actually being out-coached for once, it seemed like, against Mike Tomlin. A few tricky chess move decisions there, but also some that were questionable. And it really just overall, team-wise, the Patriots have been fighting this off for several years now and taking advantage maybe of when doors were open for them, the AFC, but losing a myriad of weapons and not always able to replace them. They usually can. They usually have been able to and still able to win the AFC or at least get the AFC title game, win championships. Hasn't usually been a problem. They can put you and I in there and catch a few balls from Brady and it hasn't been an issue. But maybe that's finally catching up as Brady now is a 40-year-old quarterback. He's on with that 4 in front of his number. It's a little different quarterbacking at that age and already a historic run for him at that age in general. Really only Favre having an elite year with that 4 in front of the number. But this is a different Brady. And number one order of business to point to this is how Ben played and the fact the Steelers were able to win. Now, yes, the Patriots scored only 10 points. They had miscues at the end of that game. Their offense struggled, and the Steelers' defense deserves tons of credit for that, in addition to the Patriots being weaker than in years past and not being able to find Gronk, etc., as much as he dominated a season ago, which I'll get to in a second. But look here. Big Ben, 2 interceptions in the game. Now, an adequate performance, 22-34. It was 64.7%, which is around the standard. 235 yards passing, not setting the world on fire, but a decent amount of yards passing. A typical Ben game, usually 2 touchdown passes. A lot to Juju. And you see what's going on there on the ground. Jalen Samuels, 142 yards on the ground, 7.5, not expected. So the running game was moving, especially late in that game, even without James Conner. And we know about Bell not being there all year. But 2 interceptions. And those 2 interceptions aren't nothing. That's still the same old Ben of the last few weeks. Now, Ben is a future Hall of Famer. He's been an elite quarterback. He's not Brady or Peyton Manning, but he's a future Hall of Famer for sure. And a lot of what he does masks other issues around the Steelers. His elusiveness, how big he is, his cannon of an arm, even his accuracy at times has been able to help weaker offensive lines in years past have deep playoff runs and have success. And that offensive line has been stellar this year, for sure, especially without Bell and Connor fitting right in, and now same thing with Samuels. The offensive line got to get the credit there, not trying to necessarily take away from the players, but that goes to the O-line, and it's helping Ben too. But he's having too many of these games, too many of the 2 touchdowns but 2 interceptions, too many of those Brett Favre games where there's going to be high reward but also a high risk. Kind of a gunslinger type of game. He's almost become a Brett Favre gunslinger the last couple years. And it can take you far, but it also can really, really hurt you. There is high reward, but also high risk, and that's what Ben gave you against the Patriots. So when you look at the overall numbers, and I know that last decision by Brady was a bit iffy, but Brady's still overall, even being weaker than normal and 40 years old and being lesser than he used to be and not playing at a greatest all-time and MVP level that we've even seen just even a year ago with 500-plus yards in a Super Bowl game, even though they did lose and taking a team to another AFC crown. Ben still kind of played worse. So the Steelers won that game on an off day from Ben, or at least less than you'd want from Ben. Ben still made the mistakes, still had the 2 interceptions, still the errant throws, just really the boneheaded, stupid decisions from Ben occasionally in that game. And he's had a decent year overall, but he's an aging quarterback, and he's making more poor decisions than you would like. And that's just a fact, especially recently. We've seen a lot of those mistakes from Ben during that 3-game losing streak. Those losses, that Charger collapse, granted that's on the defense as well. The loss in Oakland, that loss in Oakland was a lot of Ben and poor decisions and mistakes. And it carried over to the game against New England. It wasn't like it was gone and Ben turned things around and was the elite Hall of Famer again. There were the mistakes. There were the miscues. There were the 2 interceptions. They could have cost them the game. They didn't. That would have cost them the game against years past Patriots teams. Against Belichick and Brady of years past, even a year ago, that would have cost them that game for sure. That's part of their dynastic run, taking advantage of other teams' poor decisions. And when you're misfiring, they're then firing on all cylinders. That was not the case on Sunday. Now, in addition to Ben being off and not really playing his A game, and Brady even arguably, at least numbers-wise, even though there were poor Brady decisions too, outplaying Ben, but yet the Steelers still winning that game, that certainly shows you the Patriots are weaker, and that exposed the Patriots a little bit. They would have won that game in years past for sure. But in addition to that, the Patriots weren't playing smart football beyond just Brady and that last minute decision and that pass that was eventually intercepted by Joe Hayden. A great play by Hayden, by the way. Got to give Hayden credit for that. I was going back and forth with colleague Neil Coulong, running the Steelers Wire with USA Today. Had him on my Trib show a lot and hope to bring him back here, bring him here on PSL. For sure need to get him on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Been talks of getting him here into the studio, showing him around the brick wall studio that we have here up above Market Square, the Beaver County Auto studio, mind you. But him and I going back and forth in terms of everyone focusing on the poor decision by Brady, the errant throw, the throw shouldn't have been, the poor decision to even throw that ball, then the bad throw once you make that decision by Brady, un-Brady-like things at the end of a game. You'd figure that he'd lead you on a comeback drive to tie or win the game in the last few minutes, not make a Brett Favre poor decision to lose that game for you, but that is what happened. But got to give Joe Hayden credit for that. That you also got to give Joe Hayden credit. And a tremendous play by Joe Hayden to get up there and make that play. Former All-Pro type play. He's a former All-Pro. That's who they traded for and was able to sign with the Browns in that offseason. That was a quintessential past Joe Hayden play, and got to give him credit for making it there. But that's only one of the dumb decisions by the Patriots when you think about it. It wasn't just about Brady and the Steelers still win even when Ben made the mistakes. You also got to look at this. And this is from Bob Labiola, veteran in this business here in Pittsburgh media for sure. Gives you some of the best Steelers coverage. But I know here this tweet is focusing on why aren't the Patriots getting more criticized from the national media when the Steelers have all these penalties. The conversation a lot of the time is on Mike Tomlin and lack of control and lack of institutional control and a carefree attitude. And I don't disagree. Maybe the national media maybe should fairly go there this week on the Patriots because, again, they were very dumb, for lack of a better word. They were dumb. They weren't playing smart football. They were playing football that I'm sure Bill Belichick was furious about and told them so after that game and all week. They were making the dumb mistakes. They were the highly penalized team that looked like there was a lack of institutional control around that team on the football field. And those mistakes led to that loss. Just as much as the Steelers playing well and not allowing the game to get away from them and getting the running game going and still having the defense play really well, almost give that credit for that win to the defense for anything on the Steelers. Samuels and the defense, they really should get that credit with the mistakes Ben made, but still enough to win. But that's a defensive win for Pittsburgh. It also came with an assist, a hockey assist. The goal was credit to the Steelers defense. The assist, maybe even multiple assists off the mistakes by the New England Patriots. And here it is again, because this is what the tweet really caught my eye and why I'm bringing it up to you guys now. 14 penalties on the New England Patriots. 14 penalties. Right there. 14 penalties against the New England Patriots on Sunday. You mean to tell me that wasn't helping the Steelers? And I understand penalties are part of the game and turnovers are part of the game. But that's un-Patriot-like. Patriot Super Bowl teams would not turn it over in critical late in the game. Brady wouldn't have made that mistake, even as great of a play it was from Joe Hayden. That would have probably been a game-tying drive instead of the interception to lose the game by Joe Hayden. Great play, though. But also, and even more so, really, a Patriot championship team, a team looking at a deep playoff run during this Brady-Belichick dynasty, and this is from Belichick at the top, forcing this on his team, wouldn't be that dumb. Wouldn't play that type of football to allow themselves to be penalized 14 times in a big game, and critical penalties as well, killing their own drives. Their offensive line couldn't click. Their defensive line wasn't winning that battle. They weren't getting it in the trenches either. Steelers were almost baiting them, winning the chess match, and pulling them into some of those penalties. Not getting as many penalties as they normally get, but being penalized that often, 14 penalties, that's not a Patriot team. That's not a normal Patriot team. What that tells me, it's a younger, more inexperienced Patriot team, obviously the exception of Tom Brady, and Gronk's there, and there's a few veterans still on this team, but it's a mostly young Patriot team. They lost some key pieces from the Super Bowl team, the AFC title team that lost to the Eagles in the Super Bowl. And many of the Others are just getting old and are lesser than they used to be. That includes Tom Brady. But they're trying to plug in place some younger guys, some newer guys, just fill some roles. Even doing so the last few years of veterans that had been there for so long that really played that Belichick way. And eventually it's catching up. And it's not working this year. They're inexperienced players that are just not playing Belichick football. They're not playing smart football, where number one, you take care of the football. Number two, you don't make stupid mistakes. And you don't get penalized that much in a big game, let alone at all, but especially in a big game. So the Patriots making mistakes they don't normally make. Tom Brady playing less than his normal self, making a mistake at the end of a game, which normally is a game-tying or game-winning drive from Brady. Instead, a really boneheaded, stupid decision and a bad throw on top of it, eventually picked off by Joe Hayden, which seals the deal. And also all the penalties. Just killing drives, killing the momentum. That's why they only had 10 points in that game. That's why they needed that drive from Brady, which eventually was picked off. That's why that they were just seemingly just lackluster on offense most of that game. Yes, the Steelers defense, again, deserves credit. It was one of the best defensive performances I've seen from that Steelers defense in at least 2 years. Because that defense cost them the Jaguar game in the playoffs last year. Butler was able to hang around while Todd Haley was a scapegoat. And the defense cost them some games this year and really wasn't playing up to snuff. It's playing better than maybe you'd expect for a defense that you didn't correct that much in the offseason and still hasn't been able to get over the loss of Ryan Shazier. Sure, but it wasn't playing like it did on Sunday. That was the best Steelers effort defensively of the season, especially with how big that game was and being a must-win. But in addition to that, it was helped, and you can't deny this. They would admit it too, I'm sure, in their heart of hearts. It was aided and helped by the stupid mistakes and the penalties by the New England Patriots, a Brady team, a Belichick team that hasn't happened to. And it hasn't happened to in years past when they win championships or have deep playoff runs, which is almost every year. 11 AFC Championship game appearances, I believe, for Brady? 8 Super Bowl appearances for Brady? 5 Super Bowl championships for Brady and Belichick together? I mean, that's the era. That's through Tomlin and Ben and beyond. But unlike an uncharacteristic Patriot game with all those penalties and with that late game drive by Brady, just not normal to them. And it's not even, another thing as I kind of wrap this up, it's not even just how the game went overall, but it's how their season's been overall. Losing in that miracle loss to the Miami Dolphins the week earlier, not being able to rebound that with all the penalties, stupid mistakes, and kind of playing unpatriot-like careless football against the Steelers when they needed that win as well. They're going to be a playoff team. They're going to win their division because it's, again, a relatively easy division, even easier than last year when the Bills were a playoff team in the AFC East. And they've been able to take advantage of that during most of the Belichick-Brady years as well. But losing big games when normally, yeah, they're not going to go undefeated every year. They only did that once, and that was the regular season where they didn't win a Super Bowl. Even though I'll give you a rant from the day, that probably was the best team of the Brady-Belichick era. But they're always going to lose a couple games. But usually not big games. Usually not the last second of a miracle win for the opponent. Usually that's them pulling those games out of the you-know-where. And usually not to the Steelers. And usually late in the game, if Brady has the football, it ends up being a game-tying or game-winning drive and not a stupid mistake by him that loses them the game. And usually they don't have 14 penalties in the game that kill drives and lead to that loss. Unpatriot-like performance in an unpatriot-like year, exposing this team as being much weaker than in years past and even a season ago. Brady included, as he's getting a year older, not hitting the wall yet. He's still a great quarterback, but approaching the wall more than even a year ago. We're seeing that. So the Steelers, big win, emotional win, but expose a little bit more about the Patriots as it's been most of the year if you pay attention to the New England Patriots. And I do, but I don't as much as New England media, Boston media, and Patriot fans. And one of them here, Peter Gammons. No, he doesn't cover the Patriots. Everyone knows who Peter Gammons is, I'm going to assume. Hall of Fame baseball writer. Covers the Boston Red Sox more so than the Patriots, covering the national scope, but he's a Boston guy. So he has the affinity for the Boston area, knows those people, knows those fans, and covers those teams, even though he's obviously a baseball guy, baseball Hall of Fame writer in Peter Gammons, grew up with the man. Look at this tweet, though. Reality is the Patriots are simply not a great team, and that's him just throwing out the headline there from the Boston Globe article. Moves down. Yahoos may blame the announcers or refs, whatever, but one is reminded of the incomparable Willie Mays in the 1973 World Series. The road does not go on forever. Peter Gammons with the pulse, and that's just an example. It's just one example, but I wanted to use Peter Gammons because when else can you get Peter Gammons on a Pittsburgh outlet broadcast that's talking football? But hey, we can do our own thing here. It's the beauty of it. So Peter Gammons got some love on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Now, Peter Gammons may or may not speak for every Boston, New England man or every Patriot fan, but he pays attention, and he often does speak for that pulse. And he's not the only one out there. Do a little search on Twitter. Search the Patriots. Search their media, not even just their fans. That's that conversation. And seemingly they're all realizing what I've been saying, that while they're still a good team, they're even above a good team, they're still arguably a great team. They're going to win a division. They're going to double-digit victories. Tom Brady's still going to have 3,000-plus passing yards. It's still going to be a normal Brady-Belichick year where they're going to be a contender and get in the playoffs. And maybe they're taking advantage of some upsets if the Chargers and Steelers, Ravens, whoever's in there, Chiefs, if they would somehow lose early and get upset, and not that it's impossible at all, and it's happened in years past during this run, maybe they take advantage and go deep in the playoffs again. Not like I'm going to bet against them, go down to the Rivers Casino Sportsbook and bet against them, as that's happening down there. I'm going to maybe move in with how great of news that is. And it's my last little plug for them, though. They're not paying us yet, so maybe they'll join up with the venture here. But they're all aware, meaning that they're obviously a contender. They're in the conversation, and maybe they could take advantage like the past, but that's not predicted anymore. They're not the favorite right now. There's weaknesses of Brady. There's weaknesses of this Patriot team. There's inexperience. There's stupidity. There's uncharacteristic play for a Belichick team, and there's stupid mistakes that are losing you games rather than helping you win games for Tom Brady. Not normal for the Patriots. Not even normal a year ago. So this is different than even a year ago. And Peter Gammons there, one more time I'll throw it up, because I just love having Peter Gammons on this show, by the way. A Peter Gammons tweet for Pittsburgh Sports Live. You never would have thunk it. There it is again, though. You can read it yourself this time. I don't need to always read to you guys. But Peter Gammons bringing up an example historically, and many of you maybe aren't aware, maybe don't know baseball history as much as Peter Gammons, or even myself. I'm a baseball history buff. I'll tap myself on the shoulder for that one. But what he was referring to there, it's a similar example, not as drastic, I wouldn't say. But Willie Mays, who many, and myself included, refer to as the greatest all time. He's the Brady. He's the GOAT of baseball players throughout history. You know, some could bring up some others. I'm not going to get into the Bond steroid conversation, but he's in that conversation as well. But Willie Mays is certainly there. 660 home runs, the Gold Gloves, doing it all at center field, as difficult of a position as that is, becoming a slugger at that position, a slugger at center field, a 50 home run hitter at center field as your primary position, doing it before Ken Griffey Jr. did, as Griffey was kind of the Willie Mays of our era, but certainly didn't surpass Willie Mays historically. And Willie Mays won a World Series early in his career. Only the one ring, though, and shows you how much of a team game baseball is and how you can't do it on your own. The other guys I just mentioned there in that conversation don't have rings at all. But anyway, Willie Mays, many regard as the greatest of all time, the GOAT of baseball players, certainly one of them. Just Flailing away, kind of embarrassing himself, though, in another World Series, 1973 World Series. Willie Mays hanging around, long career. Had a few pennants as well, in addition to the early championship in 54. I believe it was over the Indians. But got to 73, got to that World Series, end of his career, tail end, and Willie Mays just looked a shell of his former self, to say the least. Willie Mays flailing away there with the Mets and just looking less than Willie Mays. Not at all looking like the greatest baseball player of all time, if you just take a snapshot there. And that's what Peter Gammons was referring to in terms of all the greats, even the greatest of all times, the Willie Mayses, the Tom Bradys, the Bill Belichick for coaches. Eventually, Father Time's undefeated. Eventually, the wall hits. And eventually, you lose it. I mean, what kind of an image is that? Willie Mays, a New York, San Francisco Giant legend, greatest all-time baseball player for many. And then you see him flowing away, just stinking up the joint, kind of embarrassing himself in a World Series for another franchise. It's just odd. And you're not going to get that image necessarily from Brady. I don't think he'll give that to you. I think there's too much pride there, and he's been too great. He knows his legacy. He's conscious of it. But he wants to hang around, and I don't know if he'll be able to if he keeps this up. But the image of Brady throwing a bad, stupid ball late in a big game that's eventually intercepted, that's a Brett Favre image, as much as I love Favre. But that's not a Brady image. His images are coming back and leading you to ties or wins late in those last 2 minutes. And his heroics, picking the team on his back, no matter who is a receiver on that field. Whether Gronk has 2 catches for 21 yards or 100 yards and dominating like a transformer like he was against the Steelers last year. That's another thing, too. Gronk's been less than himself, but they couldn't involve Gronk in the offense. Brady maybe hitting that wall like Willie Mays did. Those are 2 GOATs, maybe finally hitting the wall or at least being less than themselves. And Gronk, throw him in, too. Gronk, a legend. Gronk's a future Hall of Famer, one of the greatest tight ends of all time. Certainly of the last 10 years when healthy. And he wasn't able to get involved. He looks to be a shell of his former self. Granted, that's more on injury, but they weren't able to use him to dominate like they were a year ago and in years past. So I don't mean to rain on the parade. I really, really don't. I don't mean to pump the balloon. I don't. I kind of maybe apologize. I don't really, though. But I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news or the reality check for many of you. But you need it because, well, you should celebrate, and you absolutely should celebrate and enjoy the big win. I'm not saying don't enjoy it. It doesn't mean the Steelers are this world beater, that they're going to dominate the Saints on the road, have this long playoff run, or they're the new class of the AFC, or they really showed you what they can do, or they finally are just such a great team and greater than the Patriots. They might be better than the Patriots, and they beat them, so they can say that. Finally. But it was more about the Patriots being less than themselves, about a Patriot team being stupid on a football field when you wouldn't think that. A Patriot team being exposed this year. This Patriot team they beat less than the Patriot team they lost to even a year ago. And certainly exposing a certain situation that's also meaning that Tom Brady, as great as he was, like Willie Mays, Tom Brady being exposed, maybe making those mistakes and being less than he used to be, as great as he was. Same thing for Gronk. So enjoy the Steelers win, but still be cautious and careful the rest of the way, because their win over the Patriots, 17-10, they still didn't play all that wonderful. The defense did, but that's about it. They didn't ruin the game. They took advantage of opportunities, but they didn't play great. They didn't play their A game. That shouldn't be the best Steeler football you can ask for. And the Patriots are exposed now. They're less than they were a year ago. It's been evident throughout the year. Brady, Gronk, all the way through. Even Belichick finally being outcoached by Mike Tomlin. So enjoy it while you can. Enjoy it while you can. It's great that Ben and Tomlin finally snagged one from Belichick and Brady. But let's keep it real, as I like to do here in my career and on this show, that the Steelers' victory over the New England Patriots, a lot more about the Patriots being exposed than the Steelers being that great. This was another edition of Mic Drop on Pittsburgh Sports Live from the Beaver County Auto Studios. Want to remind you to, again, as I show you there on the screen, click subscribe on the YouTube channel. Follow us. Where is it? There it is. Follow us on Twitter at PGH Sports Live on Twitter. Go to our websites. Go to our myriad of networks. Pittsburgh Soccer Now, Pittsburgh Hockey Now, Kongursky's Venture, telling you all about the Penguins drama, as they also are polarizing this year, as they always are, but they really need to pick it up. A lot to talk about there, as he gives you live Pens chats, so you can even join in on that conversation. PGHSportsLive.com for where this piece of broadcast gold lives, as well as everything we do here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. You can go there for all the archive content and even wait for an announcement on a future venture and more of what we offer in the whole Pittsburgh Sports Now family. I am Mike Asti, conquering sports radio like the Patriots once did. The Patriots once did, but the conquering days of the Patriots are over. My conquering days never are yet, though. One day at a time.